Good morning and welcome. Die vocabulaire tarfolcher of bienvenue, bonjour toutes et à tous. C'est vraiment Versailles ici.
It really is Versailles here.
The IEA's 8th annual Global Conference on Energy Efficiency. We're delighted that so many people could join us from so many places around the world. We hope you're going to have a very enjoyable stay with us here in Versailles. Many interesting conversations about energy efficiency. So let's get straight on with our opening panel. Let's get started. Thank you very much.
Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I am very pleased to welcome you, all of you, to Versailles for the IEA's 8th Annual Global Conference on Energy Efficiency. I would like to sincerely thank Madam Minister, Minister of France, Minister Agnès Pannier-Runacher, and joining us, the IEA, to host this event this year. I also want to thank the Danish Minister, Dan Jorgensen, for co-hosting the last year's event in Denmark, in Sonderborg. It was an excellent event, Mr. Minister. And also thank you for your all support for clean energy globally. Thank you very much for joining us today. Dear colleagues, for those who are with us now and who are following us through our live stream, I can tell you that I am, as head of the IEA, very, very happy to see that the energy efficiency gets so much interest. I will give a couple of numbers about the attendance now. And when we talk about the solar or wind or hydropower, electric cars, there is already a very strong interest. But now I am very happy to see this interest. Now, we have more than 700 people registered throughout this week, and we have over 90 countries represented, and of those countries, more than 30 ministers are with us. And every single region of the world is represented here. As such, it shows me two things. One, it is there's a lot of interest in energy efficiency, and the second, it's a global issue. I am particularly happy or pleased to see that there's so many colleagues from the emerging world, especially from Africa with us, and I am so happy to see that the continent like Africa having a major development challenge in front of itself, sees energy efficiency as a critical topic. I am also happy to see that in addition to governments, the industry is here, the private sector. We have over 50 CEOs from a diverse range of companies, from air conditioner companies to electric car chargers, from construction and buildings to telecoms to IT. So it is not only good news that they are here, but it also makes me happy to see that the private sector see a business case in energy efficiency. Because with all respect to private sector, one of the main preoccupations of them is to make money, and they see energy efficiency in an area to make money. It is another confirmation of the energy efficiency promising a lot. Now, I would also like to thank the Schneider Electric, who enable us to meet in this great part of Paris, in Versailles, helped us tremendously, especially the chairman, Jean-Pascal Turcot. I don't know if everybody knows Jean-Pascal, but I know Jean-Pascal since many, many years. He is a captain of clean energy transition. It's not only energy efficiency, but around, and has a heart for the emerging countries, and he, in a very short period of time, I should say, he transformed the Schneider as a major player in the clean energy area. So, Jean-Pascal, thank you very much what you have done throughout these years for the world and for the energy. Now, dear colleagues, since 24th of February, we are seeing the energy markets are going through a historically turbulent times. Energy prices, supply, demand. In some countries, we see blackouts and others because energy and geopolitics was very much interwoven. But when we look at the numbers, sit calmly and look at the numbers, as we do at the IEA, one of the good things to work at the IEA is you have all the energy and climate data at your fingertips. So when we look at this data, one message is coming very clear, very clear. A new, clean energy world is emerging. Fast, and faster than many people do realize. I give you a couple of numbers. Solar energy in 1 year, additions increase by about 40%. This is what we have built, perhaps in the last 20 years. In 1 year, it increased by 40% because it's becoming cheaper, mainly, and government support. Another thing, transportation sector, electric cars, huge growth. Dear colleagues, 2 years ago, only 2 years ago, 1 out of 25 cars sold in the world was an electric car. 1 out of 25, 2 years ago. And this year, it is 1 out of 5 cars sold in the world is an electric car. Huge growth, the electric cars. The same thing we see in heat pumps. In many parts of the world, in Europe, in the United States, the sales of heat pumps for heating purposes are taking over that of traditional heating systems. And France, Madam Minister, is a very good example for that. Another clean energy technology for us, for the IEA, which is nuclear power, is making a comeback across the world. So we are seeing that the clean energy is coming very, very strongly. I want to share one more number. I'm very sorry, but this number I find extremely important and symbolic, but also in real terms. According to our report we published last week, investment report, this year, amount of investments going to solar is higher than amount of investment in going to oil production. This is, in my view, something tells a lot for all of us to consider. Now, what about energy efficiency in this whole context? And we also see that from this emergence of new clean energy system, energy efficiency is also coming very strongly. In the last 1.5 years, many countries around the world, covering 70% of the global economy, came up with new, most cases binding policies for energy efficiency. Some of them for buildings, some of them for transportation, and some of them for industry. This is very encouraging. And last year, global energy efficiency improvement was 2 times higher than the historical averages, which makes us again very happy. But, dear colleagues, despite this, some good news that the emergence of the clean energy system, we see that we are still far from reaching our climate and energy targets. Still a lot of room to go. But definitely, we are on the right track. We have to do more, and I should tell you that what also makes me happy on the political level is the determination of many countries. Last 10 days ago, I was in Hiroshima, the G7 Leaders Summit. Prime Minister Kishida chaired the meeting, but he also invited some of the major non-G7 major energy consumers, such as President Lula of Brazil, such as Prime Minister Modi of India, such as the President of Indonesia, Joko Widodo. There was a lot of convergence of world leaders coming from different political backgrounds, different continents, different economic development levels, that the clean energy is the future of the world's energy. There is a major convergence. In that session, climate and energy session, I made a call, and I want to repeat this here to all of you, to world leaders. Because we believe 2030 is a very important milestone. Of course, all the many countries' policies go to 2050, 2060, but we want to play safe, 2030. So our 2030, based on the International Energy Agency's, I should say now, the legendary benchmark study 2 years ago, Net Zero 2050, what needs to happen in 2030 is 2 things. Between now and 2030, we have to double, 2 times increase in energy efficiency and 3 times increase in renewable capacity. So this is our vision: double the energy efficiency improvement and triple the renewable capacity. Of course, we need other technologies as well, but we think these are the pillars of a clean energy transition, our chances to have a equitable and just energy transition. So why do we want the energy efficiency to double, 2 times increase? First of all, we want energy to be affordable for the people, especially those in the low-income countries. We want energy to be secure, and we want energy to help us to reach our climate targets. So it is the reason we very much like to see that we have also a momentum in this excellent gathering of the ministers, CEOs, the NGOs and other organizations to look at the vision of how we can double the energy efficiency improvement globally. So this is our hope, this is our wish. Before finishing my words, once again, I want to thank the French government to co-host this meeting with us, and also Schneider Electric for the great support. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you allow me, I would like to invite Madam Minister to share her remarks with us. Thank you very much, and Madam Minister, please. Merci.
Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and dear friends, let me begin by expressing my warm thanks to Fatih Birol, our outstanding IEA director, for organizing this conference, and to Jean-Pascal from Schneider Electric for supporting it. And I'm very happy to welcome you in Paris just 2 weeks before the Paris summit, where President Macron will push a very ambitious climate agenda on global financing. Dear friends, as you know, we are facing a double crisis. We are facing a climate crisis. The IPCC is telling us we are on course to overshoot our 1.5-degree target, maybe even before 2030. And we are seeing the dramatic consequences of this already, with massive wildfires all over the world, and even as we speak, in Canada. We are also facing an energy crisis. With the war in Ukraine, energy prices surged, threatening our people and our companies. The first and easiest way to address this double crisis is to reduce energy demand. To accelerate on the reduction of energy demand, we have 2 major levers: energy savings and energy efficiency. Energy savings first is one of the most cost-efficient solutions. To be blunt, turning down the heater or switching the light off does not cost anything except changing one's habits. But it implies behavioral change that governments can nudge. In France, we have launched a Plan de Sobriété, sufficiency plan, that encourages all sectors to reduce energy demand. We have asked our largest companies, or global companies, to implement their own energy savings plan, and we elaborated one for public bodies so as to set the example and motivate the whole population to adjust its behavior. And during last winter, this initiative helped us in France to reduce our electricity and gas consumption altogether by 12%. And I want to be clear, it was not only a question of hot weather or of price signal, it was the outcome of an action plan that was broadly implemented. We will be launching in a couple of days the second phase of this plan to make it last beyond the energy crisis, to make it contribute to the long-term fight against climate change. Our different plans include training young people at school on energy savings, asking every major company to implement this sufficiency plan, and working with all sectors of the economy to identify good practices and disseminate them as widely as possible. I am happy to see that other countries are developing similar tools. I am thinking, for example, about India with its LIFE program. And I am happy too to see that this question is raising in the discussions around the world, such as in the last G7 on energy. In Europe, we took emergency measures to reduce energy consumption in the context of the energy crisis. Together, EU countries achieved a reduction of 19% of gas consumption between August 2022 and March 2023. We need now to prolong this effort in the long run. The second tool is obviously energy efficiency. As Fatih mentioned, and I thank the IEA for its new study on energy efficiency, bringing efficiency improvements to 4% per year would reduce up to 1/3 the current global energy consumption and emissions. This is massive, and it is a clear call to action. As the IEA pointed out, it also carries additional benefits. Doubling efficiency measures in the world by 2030 would create an additional 12 million jobs, which is something, help bring electricity to more than 800 million people, and reinforce energy security. All sectors are involved when it comes to accelerating energy efficiency measures. I am thinking, of course, about building renovation and building automation and control systems. I also think of more efficient vehicles, appliances, and industrial processes. To succeed, we need a deep involvement of all stakeholders represented during this conference. Governments and public bodies, of course, but also companies and finance operators. And as mentioned by the IEA, doubling annual efficiency-related investments would be needed by the end of the decade. To succeed, all countries need to take significant steps now. And I believe this 8th Global Conference on Energy Efficiency is a great opportunity to collectively find a way towards the net zero scenario, a win-win scenario. I am convinced that this global conference will help building more ambitious policies, finding innovative technological solutions, and encouraging behavior change. So thank you very much again for being here, for taking your part of this new battle, and I wish you fruitful debates for this major conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. And as you said, we are all looking forward to President Macron's summit very soon, where we hope to see some good news in terms of a key topic, one of the main barriers for clean energy, namely financing. So we are very much looking forward to that. In 2015, Paris was the city gave the world the Paris Agreement, and I very much hope that the President Macron's summit will provide another good news in terms of financing. So, dear colleagues, we mentioned that the last year there was an excellent meeting in Sonderburg, organized together with IEA and Danish government and with the help of Danfoss. And this year, we are once again thankful to Schneider Electric and its chairman, Jean-Pascal Tricoire. Where will the next year's meeting will be is a question mark for many, but not for me. And one of the ministers, this minister will soon announce it, but for this year, we are very happy to have it in Versailles. And we are very honored to have the support of Schneider Electric, and it is Captain, my friend, Mr. Tricot, Jean-Pascal.
Good morning, dear Excellencies, dear ministers, dear leaders, dear friends. First, I really like to thank you for honoring us of your valuable presence on your precious time to join us in this beautiful city of Versailles at the beginning of June. But we know that your agenda is very busy, so we really appreciate that you take the time so that we'll discuss and work together on this key subject of energy efficiency. Fatih, I'd like really also to thank you. We've been really working together for now many, many years, but thank you for organizing this event and associating Schneider Electric to the organization of it. You know, I think if we're in this room today, when people speak about energy around the world, people love to speak about the supply. And these are passionate debates about oil, gas, renewable, nuclear. Sometimes it's very passionate, but very often the forgotten child of this is energy efficiency, while in all of our countries and companies, we consider it the highest priority. So we should all integrate that somewhere the cleanest, the cheapest, and the fastest source of energy to implement is energy efficiency. And we've been given direction, very clear direction of IEA on the French government, and now I would like to focus as an industrialist on the how, on where I see the opportunities on the problems that we are facing together on our journey to energy efficiency. So in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to be speaking about that, and I want to start by 3 disclaimers. First, I'm going to serve you with a lot of figures, which is a pretty dry exercise for a breakfast time, and apologies for that. And granted, you will find that most of those figures seem to be wrong. Actually, like every figures about the future, they are as wrong as any figures. And they speak about global average. I can just certify one thing. After 20 years of practical experience, they are directionally right. And they express, I think, what we are facing. The second thing is that I'm not going to cover all subjects. I'm not going to be speaking in industry, while Schneider is doing 50% of its business in industry, because our experience at industry over the past years has been taking very seriously the subject of carbon emission reduction for attractiveness, on energy cost reduction for competitiveness. So I'm going to focus, and that's my third disclaimer, all my examples on the building segment. Because, well, first, IEA says it's the most inefficient part of the environment around us. It's responsible for 40% of carbon emission. And you know what, in this room? We all live in buildings, we all manage buildings, we sometimes own buildings, so we all share a responsibility. After those 3 disclaimers, I will jump into the subject and make a quick picture of the situation. Anybody or everybody who works in energy and climate knows that we have 2 responsibilities. One is to bring safe, as you said, Fatih, affordable energy to 3 billion more people on Earth. The 800 million that today don't have access to electricity, and the 2 more billion who will join us in the next 30 years. And energy is your passport to a decent life, so our duty is to make sure that in 2050 everybody has access to it. The second one is to curb radically the emissions. And if you look at the red curve, this is what happens if we stay with today's model. And if you look at the green curve, this is an IEA scenario, this is a net zero scenario, this is where we need to bring the curve of emission. And you see that it's not an evolution, it's a revolution of a trend. And that goes with a combination of decarbonizing fossil fuels, because they will still be with us in 30 years. A lot of electrification, which is electrification of usages, coupled with production of decarbonized electricity. And you see the part of energy efficiency speak about the forgotten topic, which makes the largest part of the contribution to reaching the objective. So now, let's be very practical. I said I would be focusing. 15 days ago, we're in France today, my country, and 15 days ago there was a report, the report Pisani was given to the government and expresses what it means for France to go back to a net zero trajectory. And I don't need to explain that what you see here is a drastic change of evolution of carbon emission, not in 30 years, in the next 8 years. That's today, that's tomorrow. And again, I said I would focus on building, and it's good news because building is the biggest contributor to that reduction, but it means that for buildings, we have to do 3 times more reduction than what we've done in the past 10 years and the 10 years before. So, speak about the change, it's a big disruption in the way we see things. Now, zoom out, right, and go to the largest thing in Europe, and I'm starting with developed countries. I'm not forgetting fast-growing countries or fast-developing new economies, in a nutshell. But if Europe has the same problem as France, it's a complete change of trend, a complete change of speed. And the observation is very simple. The current model that we have, even today as we speak, does not work. So we normally, when we speak about energy efficiency, we tend to revert to new construction, except that 99% of the operating emissions are happening in existing buildings. And I take the figures of the European Commission, 75% are considered as inefficient. Actually, it's a quite forgiving definition. That doesn't mean those buildings are net zero compliant. Actually, if you go to net zero compliant, you are less than 10% of the building which are compliant. So now, I'm not very good at math, but today we retrofit at maximum 0.5% of the building every year. Which means we are on a trajectory to have solved our problems in 150 years, which brings 2 problems. It doesn't fit with the objective of Europe, which wants to be net zero by 2050. And personally, my life expectancy, unfortunately, is not 150 years, and I would really love to solve that problem for my children in the next 25 years. So if we need to do that, we need to go from 0.5 to 3% of retrofit every year to bring that down to 25 years, which means we have to do multiply by 6 in terms of time of retrofit. In industry, when you want to reach multiply by 6, you shoot for multiply by 10, and maybe you have a chance to go to multiply by 6. So let's say that multiply by 10 is the objective. Now, let's take a break from energy. Stop speaking about energy. And let's go back to the past. In the 90s, one of the key objectives for humanity was to give everybody access to a phone. Why was that? Because phone is your inclusion to economy and to education. And at that time, in 1990, 30 years ago, only 10% of the world population had access to a phone. Fast forward 30 years today, 90% of the world population has access to a phone. How did we accomplish that miracle? We complemented the existing technology, landlines, with new technologies. Wireless for deployment at scale, much faster, and digitization going to smartphones so that a phone wouldn't be just giving a call, it would bring you Uber, it would bring you tons of services, remote meetings that were not existing before. Let's take this analogy and speak about energy. The way we've addressed energy efficiency in the past many years has been mostly through traditional insulation of buildings. Now let's look at what the world has become in the past 10 years. You had the emergence of technology disruption. The first one is digitization, smart homes, smart buildings, smart metering, which allow you to know where you consume, how much you consume, and to control automatically loads. The second one is, and that was mentioned by Fatih with striking figures of evolution, the electrification of usages. Of course, the fashionable part of it is cars, because we are all passionate about cars, but the most impactful is probably heat pumps. And for a disclaimer, Schneider doesn't do heat pumps, so I'm promoting a cause that we don't benefit of. And then the other part of the equation is decarbonization, where all of us on the roof of our companies, of our homes. We can start producing energy through photovoltaic, storage, microgrids, and we can share better the energy through smart grids on demand response sectors. And 70% of CO2 emissions can be removed today using existing technology, not waiting for the next innovation. So take figures, and again, I can be criticized on those figures. They're average of everything we do at Schneider. But you see that the first line, which is the savings on the cost, is the way we do it today, mostly through passive insulation of buildings. Take digital energy efficiency, go into a smart home, smart building, brings you for 1/5 to 1/10 of the cost on much faster times of implementation, brings you the same result, or a very significant part of the result. And same thing for heat pumps, and same thing for rooftops. And really, time is money there because you can deploy much faster. And we can say we've done a lot in energy efficiency. Take Europe, which is supposed to be a green continent. Only 10% of the building have digital in them. And residential is less than 2% equipped with digital controls. We are just at the beginning of the revolution of digitization in the buildings. I will skip that one. It shows you that in a home with existing technologies, respect to the average home, you can divide by 2 to 3 the energy bill and the emissions, or 4 to 10 in the new if you combine passive and active. And now I'm going to switch a little bit focal on a very key topic for the world. And I'm really meaning it because Schneider does 50%, we do 50% of our business in new economies, in the fastest developing part of the world. And again, in the spirit of focusing, I've just taken 2 geographies, which will be the place of the highest growth of population in the next coming 30 years, Africa and India. Plus 1.3 billion people, many people moving to cities, more than 40% of the world population in 30 years' time. And as I have committed to speak only about buildings, think about that. In those 2 continents, there will be the building of 100 billion square meters in the next 30 years, which represents the equivalent of today's China plus Europe, or represents a plus 40% in the building square footage of the world. Which means here, not only, of course, we should try to retrofit, but what's important is to bring technologies that make it possible to build from the beginning net zero compliant. And that's a worldwide effort because that impacts all of us. So that's a lot of talking about what we should be doing on the challenges that we have, but we can see also this as many opportunities for us to progress, especially as we benefit from the explosion of those new technologies. Look, technologies do exist. The revolution to accomplish is probably as exciting as the one of internet, as the one that drove all of us to have a smartphone. My wildest dream for this conference is that we work practically on what are the barriers, on how we can remove those barriers and open the way to energy efficiency at scale. And it's not only about carbon, it's about money. Think about it. I mean, when you save on your energy, all of us save on our P&L, on our resources. The people in our country get more money that they can put in things. And you invest one shot, but you get recurrent savings. It's also about the balance of trade of countries, because importation of fossil fuels costs a lot to many countries. So it's a lot about not only carbon, but it's also about the finances of everybody in the world. And it's about job creation, because if you work on new construction, you work on 1% of the park. If you work on energy efficiency, you work on 99% of the existing facilities. So with that introduction, 10x should be our objective, and I look forward to be working with you over the next 2 days on this fascinating subject. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jean-Pascal, for this excellent remarks. So, dear colleagues, I am about to finish this session, but once again, thank the French government and the Schneider Electric for joining the forces with the EE to organize this major meeting on global energy efficiency. I will mention throughout these 2 days, but also thanks go to my colleagues at Brian Motherway. He's our energy efficiency guru, but also works on the just, equitable energy transition. Thanks to them as well. Now, we are moving to the next session, a very all-star session, the next session. But before that, please join me to thank once again French government and Schneider Electric for their great efforts. Thank you. Dear colleagues, as I said, we have a very powerful and diverse panel here. I don't know you, but I am really myself looking forward to hear what they think on energy efficiency in their countries, in their businesses, and whether the IEA is too much of dreaming that the energy efficiency is becoming a major preoccupation for the governments. Is it right or wrong? I am very much looking forward to hear that. We have, as I said, an all-star team here. One of the ministers on her way, the Togo minister, we are waiting any moment her to arrive. But now maybe I first introduce our colleagues here. On the very left, we are very happy to have the Madam Commissioner from European Union, Mrs. Kadri Simpson. Thank you very much. And then we have next to her Zhao Shenqin, the Vice Chairman of the NDRC of China. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for joining us today. Again, on my left, we have Christiane Gambau, who is the CEO of World Green Building Council. Thank you very much once again for your support. On my very right, we have, as I mentioned, Dan Jorgensen, Minister for Development Cooperation and for Global Climate Action. Dan, once again, I think the third time, thank you very much for all the support. And we are very honored to have the Minister of Energy and Petroleum, His Excellency Mr. Churchill. Thank you very much, sir, for coming here. Now, what I thought is that I will give the colleagues just 3 minutes of an opening remark in their businesses, in their daily work, in their with the governments, with the industry. how important energy efficiency is for their work, and do they really see what we are seeing at the IEA, that it is getting much, much important when it comes to provide affordable energy, secure energy, and also addressing the environmental issues. Maybe I can start with Madam Commissioner. Madam Commissioner, last 1.5 years were very challenging in Europe, and one of the tools, if I may say so, you used to address the looming energy crisis in Europe, and we were able to tackle it, in my view, excellent way in Europe. We have not seen in Europe a recession. We have not seen a blackout, and we were able to bring the emissions 2.5% down. So I hope energy efficiency played an important role in achieving those impressive numbers. Over to you, Madam Commissioner.
Yes, Fatih, indeed, energy efficiency played a very important role. And before I will take my 3 minutes to explain what we did and what we plan to do in the midterm, I want to thank you and the International Energy Agency for your very good cooperation and advice. Because in this situation, when you are losing your dominant gas supplier overnight and facing lots of uncertainties, partners like International Energy Agency are very crucial part of your plan. And you gave us clear instructions with your 10-point plan already last spring that on top of diversifying away from Russian supply to trusted partners, we did so. Now our major gas supplier is Norway instead of Russia. And by switching fuel where you can, you also have to prioritize energy savings. And it was one of the first emergency measures so that European ministers, 27 energy ministers, managed to agree on. It took us 6 days. That agreement that we are starting now to save the natural gas. And Agnès Pannier-Runacher already mentioned that our gas consumption between August last year until March this year was 18% smaller than the same period 5-year average. And that means that we saved 53 billion cubic meters of gas. But if I should simplify the numbers, then basically this was the gas we were able to put into our storage on top of successfully diversifying away to international partners who supplied us additional gas and on top of fuel switch. And if your underground gas storage is full, then it calms the markets. How we did that? Well, first of all, it was behavioral change, really awareness campaigns, so that every single citizen knew that it makes sense to save where you can. There were also governmental decisions. Some countries gave clear instructions that you should not heat outdoor cafeterias or terraces. Others gave instructions to limit the outdoor traffic lighting, for example. Well, simple steps, but altogether citizens and industry saved 53 billion cubic meters. And then, of course, it was extraordinary year for our renewables. And as we all know, if larger share of renewables will cover our electricity consumption, then it also demands storage solutions and digitalization of our grids, and this is our next step. We will invest massively to upgrade our grid and to digitalize, because unless we will do so, we will not achieve our new very ambitious targets for 2030. 42.5% our energy should be covered by renewables, and on top of that, very ambitious target for energy efficiency. And we do believe that it makes sense, it is cost efficient, and this is also the reason why our President von der Leyen announced that at COP We are creating a broad alliance of like-minded governments, and I want to thank you again, Fatih, helping us to create this coalition of governments and countries who are willing to play their part and are willing to commit also so that we will achieve these targets on energy efficiency. And of course, it needs massive investment. But unless we will do so, we will not meet Paris targets, and this is something that is necessary indisputably. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Commissioner. First of all, once again, what you have achieved in Europe last year, and also for your remarks now. If I may ask you one very quick question, Madam Commissioner. We know that the many governments, you have 27 of them, takes the energy efficiency seriously. Do you have the feeling that they are really determined to take it to the next step, energy efficiency, in their day-to-day work, those European governments? Because they already did a lot, as you mentioned, but do you see that also in the next years, they are considering the energy efficiency in the buildings, in transportation, as a key policy agenda item?
Yes, we do. We see this in real life, because we are not only negotiating higher, very ambitious targets, but on top of that, our governments are preparing national energy and climate plans. These are plans of projects in pipeline that allow them to achieve what was promised. And of course, target for each and every member state is different. So this is unique. This is not like France and Cyprus and Finland will have the same way to achieve climate neutrality or energy efficiency gains. But with the help of Commission, we calculate what is possible, highest possible target for 2030, and then they will fill their national plans with projects. On top of that, we do have additional financing available. It was 3 years ago when COVID hit us, and we decided that our recovery has to be green and digital recovery. And that's why now member states do have these additional hundreds of billions available at their disposal, and they will invest massively into the renovation. This creates local jobs. This helps us to cut fossil fuel consumption. And this, of course, brings benefits to the wider range of citizens with affordable heating bills. And it is necessary to guarantee the support for our green transition. We need citizens' support for that.
Thank you very much, Madam Commissioner. So I can take from what you say is that the efforts of the European countries are very much in line with the IEA's vision of doubling, even further doubling the energy efficiency. Congratulations for that. Now from Europe, we go to a major country, China. Dear colleagues, when you look at the numbers today in terms of the clean energy transition for solar, for wind, for electric cars, for nuclear, China is playing a leading role. Now here, therefore, we are very happy to host Mr. Chairman of the National Development and Reform Commission, NDRC, His Excellency Mr. Shao, to share with us, first of all, his opening remarks. Mr. Chairman, we are looking forward to hear from you China's experience in clean energy. Over to you.
Thank you for Executive Director Birol for providing us with this opportunity. It's my honor to participate in the conference this morning.
Glad to meet you. 刚才署长也其实已经介绍。
Just now, Executive Director Birol already has told us that today is a very important opportunity, and there are participants from over 90 government agencies, international organizations, businesses. I think we have over 700 people here today, right? And so together, so that we can discuss energy efficiency and addressing climate change. And I think this is extremely meaningful. Just now, Executive Director Birol also said that he really pays great attention to the situation in China and is quite familiar with it. And it is my honor to, on behalf of the Chinese National Development and Reform Commission, to congratulate all participants of today's conference. And I would also like to express my most sincere gratitude to the Ministry of Energy Transition of France and the IEA for organizing this conference. In this first section, Executive Director Birol and Minister Agnès Pannier-Runacher of France, as well as the Director of Schneider Electric, told us a little bit about government statistics and various information, and I think this is very inspiring to all of us. So as Director Birol asked, I would like to use this opportunity to share with you some information about the current situation in China. We believe that energy and climate change are some of the most serious global challenges that we face today. And I think that these have to do with the fate of all of humanity. If we can promote energy conservation and increase energy efficiency around the whole world, I think this is something that all of us need to work on, and this will help increase energy security. Also, energy security is the foundation for increasing energy efficiency. If we can improve the reliability and affordability of the energy we can obtain, this will help promote a decrease in carbon emissions. It would also help us to actively fight climate change as well. It would also help us promote new drivers of growth and to achieve more robust, greener, and healthier global development. As for China, we have for years been prioritizing energy conservation and increasing energy efficiency in accordance with Xi Jinping thought on ecological civilization. China has been establishing and implementing its policy of clear water and green mountains alongside mountains of silver and gold. And we have been implementing a comprehensive energy conservation strategy so that we can decarbonize all of society, promote the establishment of an ecological civilization in China, and this has undergone historical, transformative, and comprehensive changes in recent years. Here, I also wanted to give you a few specific figures. When it comes to energy efficiency, it has really improved in China. We can see clear results from the energy transition. Just now, Dr. Birol shared some statistics with you, and I think that mine will also be of interest to you and perhaps might surprise you. China has been focusing on energy efficiency as the basis for social and economic development, and we have extended it to all areas. We are focusing on conservation in technology, management, and structural energy conservation as well. For the past decade, China's cumulative energy intensity has decreased by 26.4%, and our annual energy consumption increase of 3% has supported an annual economic growth of 6.2%. And you have to really make great efforts to achieve these kinds of results. We are also one of the countries in the world with the fastest reduction in energy intensity. We are actively promoting the energy transition and promoting the development of renewables. Last year, in 2022, China's new wind and solar installed capacity accounted for 78% of all new installed capacity in the country. And nationally, the scope of renewable installed capacity surpassed 1.2 billion kilowatts. And we have been occupying first place around the world for the past several years, and this situation will continue. Moreover, we are making progress on conservation and decreasing our reliance on carbon, green industry development. We have been upgrading and refurbishing our industrial capacity as well. Starting in 2012, China has decreased large-scale industry energy intensity by 36.2%. And we have been focusing on the development of green architecture and building retrofitting. So, for example, at the end of 2022, energy-efficient buildings in China accounted for 65% of the surface of residential buildings, of which 90% were accounted for by green buildings built that year. So just now, we heard the director of Schneider Electric, who told us a lot about various ways of increasing energy efficiency and conserving energy. And actually, this is something we are already implementing in China. The new energy vehicle industry is also rapidly developing. Now, you also mentioned NEVs, and we are also leading on this as well. Last year, in 2022, our production and sales of NEVs reached 7.06 million and 6.89 million, respectively. In terms of sales and production, for the past 8 years, we have been also occupying first place in the world. Moreover, we are continuously improving our energy conservation system and governance. As early as the 1980s, China adopted regulations on energy conservation, and I hope that all of the representatives from the different countries today might understand a little bit more about the situation in China. We actually started working on energy conservation very early, as early as the 1980s. This is when we first published our energy conservation regulations. As for the 90s, this is when we adopted the law on energy conservation, and we adopted regulations on residential buildings, public institutions. We conducted energy conservation audits and monitoring, implemented energy efficiency labeling. And we have a department which is in charge of the labeling requirement in China. And we have the director of the department here with us today in our delegation. This is a very effective program. Also, we have improved management of the important energy units in China as well. All of this has created a comprehensive regulatory and legal framework. And of course, this is continuing to be optimized depending on the changing environment. We have also adopted 364 national standards in the area, and we have covered all key industries and equipment, essentially. We have been also actively developing a market mechanism so that we can improve policy with respect to pricing, budget, taxation, financing, etc. And so that we can more effectively and efficiently distribute our energy resources. And there's another area which also just came up just now. We are continuing to promote the idea of energy conservation. We are trying to raise awareness of this issue. Just now, some friends mentioned that it's important for everyone to participate in energy conservation. We need to really cover all of society so that each and every one of us participates. As for a green lifestyle, green living is something that we're trying to promote in China. Starting in the 1990s, for the past 32 years, China has been organizing an energy conservation awareness week so that we can encourage more and more people to embrace green living, to promote energy conservation, decreasing our reliance on carbon, and making these into a new fashionable trend in society. This year, from July 10th to July 16th, we will organize the 33rd Energy Conservation Week. And we are working on it, preparing it all across the country. The theme of the year is energy conservation, decreasing our use of carbon, starting from you and me. all across the country, at the local level, we are organizing all kinds of educational activities so that we can promote this idea, share knowledge about energy efficiency, and raise awareness in society. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, as all of you are aware, China is committed to achieving carbon peaking by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2060. This is a commitment that President Xi Jinping made to the international community. And it is also an inherent need for our high-quality development. As the largest developing country in the world, we are achieving the biggest drop in carbon intensity around the world. And we will accomplish the fastest transition in history from carbon peaking to carbon neutrality. After hearing this, I know that all of you will know that this requires great efforts on our parts. But we have already adopted the necessary policies, and all across the country, we are making great efforts to accomplish this. We are doing everything we can to make the preparations in accordance with the report of the 20th Party Congress so that we can focus on our dual carbon goals, decrease carbon, fight pollution, promote ecological development, growth, to conserve energy, and promote green and low carbon development. So first, we must accomplish carbon peaking and carbon neutrality. We will do as we say. We essentially will make every effort to do this. Second, we need to promote energy conservation and increase energy efficiency. Here we also have an important national policy which concerns energy, water, food, soil, mines, and materials. All of these need to undergo conservation, integrated conservation. Third, we need to conduct an energy transition, a green transition in our development model. And fourth, we need to prevent and manage pollution. In the face of energy and climate change and these kinds of global challenges, we all need to work together hand in hand, all of our countries. Today, IEA is holding a major conference so that we can all work together. China will focus on the idea of a community with a shared future for humanity, and with all parties, together with the G20, BRICS, the EE Hub, and other multilateral organizations, will continue to deepen international cooperation on energy efficiency. We will adhere to the principle of common but differentiated responsibility, so that we can fully implement the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and its Paris Agreement. And in this way, we can contribute to the fight against climate change and the energy transition. I will stop here. Thank you so much, Mr. Birol.
Mr. Chairman, for this comprehensive and very informative remarks. So, dear colleagues, when you look at the numbers, there is no single country in the world that will not be affected by the decisions made in Beijing, in China, because of the big economy, major energy consumer, is a significant driver of clean energy technology. So I think it was very good for all of us, at least for me, I should say, to hear from the chairman of the NDRC his views about China and the world. Mr. Chairman, if I may, I have one question to you, very quick question. I mean, you mentioned the critical importance of energy efficiency to reaching the peaking of carbon and then later on 2060 neutrality. And China achieved a lot in terms of energy efficiency, you said. Are there one or two lessons that you wanted to share with us briefly in terms of your experiences improving energy efficiency, energy conservation in China.
Thank you so much, Mr. Birol, for this important question. Just now, you also mentioned the relationship between energy and development. China is the world's largest developing country. Development relies on energy. Without energy security, there can be no development to speak of. And development is the most important human right. We are making every effort to achieve the dual carbon goals. And we are also protecting energy security at the same time so that we can promote China's development. This huge country, China, with its 1.4 billion people, if we can develop in a stable manner, this is something that can also provide better development opportunities for countries around the world as well. And also, China's development is very meaningful for the entire world as a whole. Of course, you just asked me about energy efficiency. Indeed, we are striving for development, and this requires energy. And we, of course, want our energy to be more efficient. So energy efficiency is also an underpinning of our development. And in this way, we can achieve several goals at the same time. And we are working on this. We do have some relevant experience that I wanted to share with you. Probably all of you know that China has a lot of coal and not a lot of natural gas. So these are natural resources. And this is why we have to first establish the new before abolishing the old, so that we can have a reliable foundation and replace old energy with new energy. This is why we are continuously improving our planning for our new energy system. Now, there are 3 areas of experience which I wanted to share with you. Number 1, we are deepening effective, clean coal, because we have a lot of coal. This is our natural environment. But when we do use the coal, we have to use it effectively, and we should use it in a clean manner. Actually, we have already accomplished this. Our coal-burning power plants, energy efficiency is already number 1 in the world. And China has been focusing on clean coal for a long time. We have been consistently promoting coal-fired power plants and their refurbishment to decrease coal emissions, to increase flexibility, and also refurbishing heat systems. This is our 3 refurbishments plan. And I know that there are many business people who are here today, and of course all of you know that you need government support and at the same time investment from businesses. We have already refurbished over 520 million kilowatts. And our kilowatt hour efficiency has also improved greatly. So this is the first section of our experience which I wanted to share with you. We are promoting clean coal and the effective use of this coal efficiency as well. Second, we are also focusing on new energy development. The promotion of new energy, the promotion of clean energy has always been a priority for us. We are planning to, in the Gobi Desert, to build 450 kilowatts of PV to promote environmental protection, and also we will have hydropower as well. And then we will also focus on nuclear development. Mr. Birol, just now, you also mentioned these programs that we have. New PV and wind in China over the past 3 years has been over 100 million kilowatts per year. As for renewables installed capacity, as I have said, has already surpassed 1.2 billion kilowatts. And I'm sure that there are some American colleagues here. Our new installed capacity is similar for renewables to the United States installed capacity. Wind, PV, biomass, and nuclear all put together are #1 in the world. This is the second point which I wanted to make today, and this is the second aspect of our experience that I wanted to share with you. We are really promoting the development of renewables, different types of renewables, and they're all expanding rapidly. #3, we also continue our focus on energy security. Without energy security, you can't increase energy efficiency, fight climate change, etc. It is only on the basis of energy security that you can consistently, robustly, gradually increase energy efficiency. As a large developing country, China's energy needs recently have been increasing and will continue to increase in the near future as well. So in addition to decarbonizing, we need to ensure energy security and make sure that our people can continue their normal lives. We also have to promote production, supply, storage, and distribution of energy in China. China has a system that does this, so this has to be systematic. We must work on coal, gas, nuclear, and promote a comprehensive energy system with both traditional sources of energy and renewables. And of course, depending on the actual situation and developments, we adopt our approach. Our energy mix and our operations focus on a green transition, a low carbon transition. So we will really focus on this in the future. And this is what I wanted to share with you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So it is great that you cover such a great range of issues. In addition to the renewables and clean energy role of China, your other efforts in terms of bringing the emissions down, and as you rightly mentioned, the coal is stubborn, and if we want to reach our climate targets, we have to bring the coal emissions down, coal down, and this is the a major challenge in many countries. You also mentioned the international collaboration, Mr. Chairman. This is great. We have so many countries here, and we are very happy that China joined the International Energy Agency, I think 7 years ago, as a member of our family, together with India, Brazil, Indonesia, and others. We are grateful for this good cooperation. Now, dear colleagues, after two major economic powers, Europe and China, I am now turning to an area where we see a lot of energy is used and efficiency is critical, namely buildings. As such, I would like to then ask Mrs. Christina Gamboa, who is the CEO of World Green Buildings Council, to share her views about the role of energy efficiency in energy consumption in buildings. Over to you, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for the invitation. And yes, following two economic powers, let's see what I can contribute here to the vision of lessons from the crisis and also what we can do together, because I think each one of us, there's so many things to do. The challenges are huge, but we all have a role to play wherever we stand. So I also want, let's say, with my experience with what I do, also bring a sense of inspiration. And you were saying also, Fatih, in the introduction, are we thinking alongside the same lines of the IEA and the research? And what I can say is that the research and the data is very much valued around the world because it brings clarity and vision. And I guess it also brings inspiration and clarity to policymakers on the road to travel along business, inspiring business. But I guess one of the perks of my job, I'm from Colombia and I relocated to London to lead this world superpower called the World Green Building Council, is that we are determined to bring holistic sustainability principles in action to secure the 1.5-degree ambition by 2030. We work in over 75 countries and have the privilege to work with 46,000 companies. Many of you are involved. And what we do is have a space for deeper collaboration, but in particular, how is energy efficiency fitting all to this? Solutions already exist, and what we bring is clarity and roadmaps to scale. So I see a clear evidence that the transition is happening. It is happening, and buildings, of course, have a long way to go. We saw the 10x, but it just takes clarity and that deep collaboration that I was mentioning to accelerate that trend. Our Green Building Council model for collaboration is an example of leadership in this transition, because these organizations are at the forefront of delivering 1.5-degree scenario-aligned rating tools, for example, for buildings, or voluntary certification schemes that also contribute to bring clarity to national government schemes, usually going beyond code. But importantly, national decarbonization roadmaps. We've done those for the built environment in over, I guess, now 15 countries, from Colombia to Poland to Australia. And what we are now doing with those roadmaps, clear in action, and with the collaboration of many actors, including the IEA, is now bringing diverse stakeholder communities to sync. And that's where I want to pause a second to explain the sync component. Because we do have a vision, there's clarity in the numbers, we need to double efficiency by 2030, and we now have a clear evidence that that won't happen with all sectors contributing their part. The built environment has a huge potential, and policymakers can help the private sector leadership get there. I want to mention World Green Building Council's net zero carbon buildings commitment. We put out this in 2017, when possibly net zero was not a buzzword. And what we've done now is update it to a whole life carbon approach that I know Minister Dan knows in Denmark. You've embraced that concept and you have a clear vision on that policy. And what that has enabled as that whole life carbon concept in the built environment takes hold, and we demonstrate with over 170 companies decarbonizing other actions portfolios by 2030, so it's front-runner action, demonstrating the vision of the possible now, and making sure that the right signals are there to inspire policymakers that this can be done, that the business is confident, we just need more sync. And that's where the crisis sets in, because we had an amazing opportunity last year to see how we actually can step up and deliver changes much quickly than what we thought in the previous past. And that's very inspiring, and I think we have to keep that up. To bring resiliency into the conversation, because if we improve, let's say, the status of what we do in this space now, we will have resiliency, energy security, energy savings, clean energy, but in particularly a built environment that can deliver that holistic mitigation potential through highest energy efficiency, which can be done very quickly and easily. I think that's also the message. The technologies, the solutions are there. And my call would be, for the sync part of the policies, is that we make an effort for minimum energy performance standards, energy performance certificates harmonization, and making sure national governments or the platforms where you have national collaborations have clarity in that building energy codes should be performance-based, and that they should be talking to city leaders to enabling, when necessary, city leadership. Because this year, the IPCC report, we said clearly we're exceeding our carbon budget. We know the state of play. And finally, I just want to do a reference point 2 global policy principles we did at World GBC this year. All of our network of over 75 countries were behind it. What does that mean? We need to ensure that we have transformative action around those global policy principles that go, again, to those clarity and synchronization of business leadership that is ready to scale, but needs that clarity of regulation to activate the ambition loop to make sure that we have more demand for those solutions and that the citizens make the best of this opportunity for just transition and moving away from risk, disruption, unrest that we know we want to phase out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina, getting the perspectives from that very important sector. I have one question, which I think you don't expect. Yeah, so, but I really want to hear your candid view, because since this morning when I was preparing my notes, I was really very impressed that in addition to so many ministers coming, more than 30 ministers, more than 90 countries, hundreds of people, what impressed me a lot is more than 50 CEOs. Because, you know, CEOs, they are all, or most of them, great people, but their main preoccupation is to make money. Why you build a company, generally, it is the main purpose is, at least in my case, the main. So it means, am I right or wrong? Just please help me to think. So many CEOs, and there are major companies. I mean, when you look at the list, there are major companies from Asia, from Europe, North America, Africa. They are coming to this meeting, having a lot of bilateral meetings with the ministers, with other stakeholders. How do you interpret this, that we were able to bring so many CEOs?
I think there is a good alignment of stars in that silver mountains and gold mountains. There's some alignment behind business intention. I think the net zero, we already know 90% of the countries have announced a net zero target. And that has brought to the business community clarity that the net zero transition is one of the biggest businesses opportunity. And net zero, breaking it down, first component is energy efficiency. So if they are, let's say, in the business of having resiliency, continuity of their business, attracting sustainable finance into their companies that now is discriminating better through ESG reporting and many other trends, who's worthy of being in business in the next few years and who's going to be ready for delivering continuity, that makes business sense. And then I guess they're here, and that has been an evolution totally. In the past, possibly we would get, let's say, the sustainability officials or no interested in this, but now sustainability, carbon, net zero efficiency is in the boardroom. And that's why CEOs are very interested to having this policy dialogue in particular, to be able to do more of good business, which is doing less with more, the title of the previous presentation too, but also designing in efficiency into the future, because it's not only that vision of using less at all.
Thank you very much. So it means we think along the same lines, and the business, the CEOs are here. They see that it's a business case here, rather than they want to see Versailles or anything like that. So we are very happy that...
We're happy to be in Versailles.
Versailles as well, of course. But maybe next time where we go, maybe even more impressive than Versailles. We don't know. We may see in a few minutes or hours where we are going to meet. But thank you very much for your great contribution, Christina. Now, dear colleagues, we go to another continent, Africa. When we look at Africa, there are lots of challenges, access to energy, both electrification and clean cooking, as I discussed with Mr. Minister a few days ago. But many African countries are pushing the clean energy transition strongly, and Kenya is definitely a leader in Africa in terms of clean energy transition. So, Mr. Minister, we are honored to have you and hear from you your perspective in terms of clean energy transition, Kenya and Africa. Over to you, Mr. Minister.
Excellency, Fatih Birol, Executive Director, my colleagues on the panel, ministers in the House, industry captains, ladies and gentlemen, is it afternoon or morning? Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning. We're pleased to be here to participate and glad to have been selected to talk about Kenya, but more importantly, talk about what we're doing in Africa on this very important subject that until this morning, I never seriously thought about energy efficiency as a way of addressing and complementing the adaptation that most of the people in this room are going to be crumbling about to basically come to net zero, given the fact that a lot of power generation today is still not very environmentally friendly, and we have to migrate because of the climate change issue. And then certainly, until I saw the figures that 30% could be addressed through energy efficiency, and one which I'll talk to very quickly on what we are doing in our country, it's very key that really, Fatih, you've brought some 30 ministers and very many CEOs, congratulations, to basically exchange our views on how all of us who have continuously or mostly impacted on the environment and climate change come together to address the challenges that we need to address very shortly so that we can secure our planet. So thank you and congratulations for bringing us together. Let me say, in recent times, Kenya, like the rest of the world, experienced challenges on energy provisions brought about by effects of COVID-19 and the challenging global situations that we see today in Europe because of the challenges of Russia, Ukraine, and the strain that it has brought to most of our economies. We witness a marked decline in power demand of about 14% due to COVID in our country, which, coupled with the eroded ability of most customers to meet their electricity bills on time, caused a strain on the energy sector and especially the financial sustainability of the distribution utilities, who basically are the off-takers. They buy power and pay to the generators who have secured their generation on an IPP framework, and on that debt equity of 70-30, they have to pay their bills, their loans to the banks, and on the other side, the customers or the off-taker company is not able to collect all the revenues because of the COVID challenge that hit all of us. And in order to enhance resilience and sustainability of the energy sector, Kenya has put in place necessary policies and other administrative interventions. We have reinforced our resolve to develop renewable energy going forward, and we have a goal to reach 100% clean energy in our generation mix by the year 2030, which is just some 7 years to go. To achieve this, we have undertaken a robust review of our power planning, focusing additional generation to come from geothermal. We are very strong in geothermal. Our grid is 45% geothermal today. Coming from wind, we have one of the biggest wind farms in Africa, generating from one location 310 megawatts. Solar and hydro, which is our mainstay as a country that did not develop our energy mix on the fundamentals of fossil fuels. We will seek to transition our method of procurement from feed-in tariff, which is currently obtaining, and like you say, there are many CEOs here looking for business. So we'll be looking more to go to energy auctions, which is a better platform, because currently we have a long waiting list because of the least cost power development plan, because of the supply and demand issues and the need to ensure that the off-taker can buy and sell all the power that we generate, and therefore be able to support us to basically ensure that we are able to pay our loans. Kenya, on the other side, or the other hand, has abundance of renewable energy with potentials of geothermal of up to 110,000 megawatts, and a huge potential of wind and solar resources. It helps that we are enhancing our connectivity rates, aiming to reach universal access by 2030, both grid and off-grid. And further, the government has a focus in growing manufacturing as well as value addition in agriculture, which will really address the need for access to power by our citizenry in remote areas where they do not have power today, with respect to issues of food security that needs power for preservation and things like that. The health sector is also being revamped in order to offer universal health coverage, and there is a big program on the built environment to construct 250,000 houses every year for low-income earners. These heighten social and economic activities with an objective of achieving economic transformation in the shortest possible time calls upon us in the energy sector to prepare for increased demand, and more importantly, work on net zero compliant buildings that we've talked about this morning. Christina, you already have an office in Nairobi. There's a lot of work for us as we set the foundation and roll out these 250,000 houses every year. We need to ensure that the fundamentals that you have talked about this morning are laid out so that as we do this massive built environment, we ensure that we are compliant and we are able to address buildings that really support energy efficiency and are able to address the issues of climate change to that extent in terms of mitigation but more importantly, adaptation that I talked about. In tandem, we seek to enhance our energy efficiency measures, and this will increase the affordability of energy as we increase its sustainability utilization. Over the years, the government, through my Ministry of Energy, has partnered with the Kenya Association of Manufacturers to implement energy efficiency initiatives and projects targeting the industry. In addition, we have done several regulatory interventions aimed at promoting and enhancing the culture of energy efficiency, which I have also learned this morning that we really need to work more on culture change. But I want to confirm that we've really, for now, put in our regulations to an extent that there's an energy management regulation within our Act that has come out with a regulation that targets that any commercial institution or facilities that consume more than 180 kilowatts of power per annum do subscribe to, conduct audit every 3 years, and file the results with the energy regulatory body, implement energy saving mechanisms to achieve at least 50% of the recommended energy savings. One other initiative that has been built into the legislative framework through regulation is appliances, energy performance and labeling regulations, which provide for testing of appliances for energy performance, registering them with the regulator, and affixing appliances with appropriate energy labels to confirm the audit. And the Energy Act, our Energy Act 2019, which has recently been brought into force, has mandated for promotion of energy efficiency, including promotional activities and regulatory measures. In 2020, the Ministry of Energy spearheaded the formulation of the strategy through a strategy of national energy efficiency and conservation strategy through a technical committee with technical assistance from Copenhagen Center for Energy Efficiency, relaunched as UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center in April 2022. national and county governments, private sector, together with public, were engaging in various forums countrywide, and the strategy provides the government roadmaps towards achieving energy efficiency goals that will have a positive impact on the Kenyan economy. The objectives of the strategy, ED or Executive Director, are to reduce the national energy intensity by 2.8% per year, enable the country achieve 30% emission reduction by 2030 relative to what we are addressing under the SDG 7 for the year target 2030. The strategy identified 5 sectors and provides action and targets to be achieved. These sectors include household buildings, industry, agriculture, transport, and power utilities. We have also formulated the implementation plan, which articulates the methods, responsible parties, tools, financial requirements, timelines that will be useful for implementation of the strategy, and the continuous monitoring, control, evaluation, and reporting of its output, outcomes, and impacts. And in conclusion, Executive Director, given the above enabling environment, Kenya will place to achieve its clean energy goals, having already reached 92% energy mix. Our geothermal, hydro, wind, and solar today on our energy mix. In fact, when I checked my numbers for the last 3 days, we are at 95%. The challenge, of course, of sometimes poor hydrology, but certainly with the power trade that we have with Ethiopia, we are finishing with Uganda and Tanzania. We're today picking 200 megawatts of hydro from Ethiopia. We are where we have just mentioned 92% renewable on the supply side, and having started working on energy efficiency since 2006, energy efficiency has become an integral part of our country's integrated national energy plan. And furthermore, the Kenya National Energy Efficiency Strategy is highly comprehensive and has established Kenya as a regional leader in energy efficiency policy. We will continue to seek partnership in enhancing energy efficiency in Kenya, and it's a great pleasure to participate in this conference when we come together to really talk to energy efficiency, which for me today address more of the mitigation, which is a big challenge. And as we talk about adaptation rather, and we talk about mitigation of how to address climate change for us in Africa, the least contributors, we really will be looking more into the climate financing. But because today we're talking about efficiency, I think it really beholds upon us that we work on this. Finally, and in recognition of the strides Kenya has made in the deployment of renewable energy and energy efficiency, and on account of our support, of much support and partnership created, we offer to host the next Global Energy Efficiency Forum 2024 in Nairobi. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah.
So this is the best news of today. So it is wonderful. From Versailles to Nairobi. What could be better for a global energy agency like that? Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. So since you gave such a good news, I think I will not ask you a question. So this is, but still, may I ask you one thing? It is not in the papers and in the preparation notes. When we organize this major event in Nairobi next year, again, I am sure we will see many, many governments, many CEOs, many NGOs coming there. Do you also feel, as I feel, that it will give a boost to make energy efficiency a key topic in the heads of the decision makers in Africa? This is what I would like to ask you. What is your gut feeling? Can we make this happen like Kenya, you are a leader, but there are many, more than 50 other governments. We have the African Union Commissioner here with us today. So can we, you think this event, in addition to other goals, can help to reach the goal of making energy efficiency a key issue in the minds of the governments in Africa?
Thank you again. I think, like I just mentioned, that adaptation will be a big challenge in terms of when we listen to China working on clean coal to adapt to the challenges of climate change and make clean coal renewable. When we hear about the mitigations and the challenges that we are impacted on, particularly in Africa, because of climate change issues. And when we contextualize the question which Executive Directors just asked on getting the leaders to appreciate and to own the energy efficiency policy frameworks to reduce the requirements of energy, which goes into reducing cost of energy because of our per capitas in Africa. I want to confirm that when we host in Nairobi the Africa Energy Forum, which will bring some over 22 ministers of energy who have confirmed participation in the next 2 weeks, and where I'm aware most of us in the House will be participating in, I'll make the energy efficiency an agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Thank you. After this excellent news, and after covering China, followed by Africa, Kenya, Madam Commissioner Simpson already gave an overview of Europe, but now I would like to go to a country in Europe. A country, if I may, a small country, but punching, when it comes to clean energy and climate change, punching well above its weight. And one of the leaders of this achievement is with us here, Minister Dan Jorgensen, to hear his views about energy efficiency and what kind of role energy efficiency can play in the international development and also fighting against climate change. Then once again, thank you very much for all the support you give to IEA and also to advancing clean energy.
Thank you so much, Fatih, and let me start by echoing something you said in your introductory remarks, because it really is quite extraordinary and fantastic that it seems like finally energy efficiency is getting the attention that it deserves as one of the most important solutions to many of the challenges we face. Now, this happens for many reasons, of course, and probably the major ones are big structural political reasons. Certainly the war in Ukraine plays a part here, but it also happens because of thought leaders, and it happens because some actors, that being institutions or politicians or others, show the way, provide the data, create the narratives. So it's also about agency in general, but also one agency in specific, and this is you, Fatih. The IEA really plays a key role here. So thank you again, and Brian also. You called Brian a guru. I think you're both gurus. So should we give a hand for the IEA? Now, I think it's fantastic news that we are going to Nairobi next year. No doubt that for me, two of the primary reasons, or the two primary reasons for focusing on energy efficiency is one, fighting climate change, and two, this is also a question about economic growth and development. I've gotten a new portfolio. Some of you know me from my previous job when I was Minister for Climate, Energy and Public Utilities in Denmark. But since the last election, the Prime Minister decided that really we need to have a more holistic approach to development cooperation and global climate policy, because climate change is not something that might happen in the future. Climate change is here now. I'm sure many of you can recognize that from your own countries. Certainly many African countries are hit already now quite seriously by climate change. This means that not only do we have to obviously fight climate change and stay below 1.5 degrees, because if we don't, then the problems will become much bigger. This goes without saying almost. But it also means that we need to think about our energy policy as being a part of climate adaptation already now. Now, the good news is that actually compared to renewable energy, and don't get me wrong, we need a lot of renewable energy. It goes without saying that that is also a major part of the solution. But contrary to deployment of renewable energy, most energy efficiency measures can be done fast, can be financed more easily. That's not to say that it's easy, but it's easier because the investment pays itself back very fast. So, really, when we think about the green transformation, especially in developing economies, emerging economies, even if we did not have climate change to worry about, energy efficiency would still be a pragmatic, rational approach. Because not only is the energy we don't use the cleanest energy, I totally agree with that, it's also the cheapest energy. Now, I would be remiss, obviously, if I did not also mention the war in Ukraine. It really is a terrible situation for a country very close to us. The aggression of Russia is of course unacceptable. I'm sure we all agree on that. But if we look at then the concrete challenge that we who wants to help Ukraine are looking at, definitely also here energy efficiency needs to be part of the solution of rebuilding the country. If we look at the effects of the war and increases in prices on energy that it's led to and the challenges for Europe, well, it's actually a paradox that even though we would have obviously liked to not be in this situation with a terrible war, it has actually led to some positive developments. Commissioner Simpson spoke to this earlier. What we've done in Europe the last year is actually quite extraordinary. We've managed to reduce our emissions significantly. And this is then also a lesson for the future that not only is this something we need to do to fight climate change, to make sure that we can have economic, sustainable growth and development, it's also about security for individual countries, but also in a more broader geopolitical sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. Dan, a very quick question, because you work with your new assignment, additional assignment, working on international cooperation development. Do you see that the advanced economies, Europeans, North Americans, and the countries in Asia, the advanced economies, understand the importance of efficiency improvement in emerging countries for the world and for themselves? Do you see that there is it clicks in the advanced economies that the advancing clean energy transition in the emerging countries, including energy efficiency, will be good for everybody? Do you see this coming through or not yet?
Well, the glass in front of you there, is that half empty or half full? I don't know.
One-third full.
If we look at this as being half full, I would say yes, the analysis is there. I went to the spring meetings of the World Bank earlier this year, and it was actually quite extraordinary how all meetings, more or less, focused on the need for a green transformation of our societies, but of our energy sectors in specific. So if we look at the glasses being half empty, then why doesn't it happen? Why don't we allocate more resources? Why don't we make it possible to also mobilize more private financing? Why don't more countries also in their development aid allocate more to climate-related projects, including, by the way, more than 50%, in Denmark we've chosen 60%, to go to adaptation. But I really do think that the possibility next year in Nairobi, by the way, don't expect to get much sleep from now till then, because it's a big task that you've taken upon you. But I do really think that will be a good opportunity for us to take these discussions and make them very concrete, and hopefully also get institutions, companies, countries to pledge real action.
Thank you very much. And I think your leadership here as Denmark and as Dan Jørgensen will be very important. Thank you very much for also helping us for advancing the clean energy transition in the emerging countries. So, dear colleagues, this is an amazing discussion. We started with Europe, a continent that had a very important experience last year after the war, and with very good results. Went to China, a real leader when it comes to several clean energy technologies, but still challenges such as coal. And then we also see that China's plans for peak emissions and carbon neutrality soon. Then we talk about the buildings, which is a very important area of energy consumption and emissions as well, but huge potential there. And we heard from Dan Jørgensen his perspective, how the advanced economies should help the emerging countries to finance their clean energy transition. And we heard from Kenya, Minister Chirchir, not only Kenya's very impressive achievements in terms of clean energy and leadership, both in the real life but also thought leadership of Kenya in Africa, and also, as we say, the news of next year in Nairobi was the crème de la crème. So thank you very much, Mr. Minister, for hosting us next year in Nairobi. We will make sure that we support you, your colleagues, tremendously, and hopefully we got from Versailles, from Napoleon to Nairobi in the right way, and I am sure we will have more and more people there, and especially under the key topic of how we can finance clean energy transition, especially energy efficiency in Africa and beyond. Dear colleagues, with this, I am finishing this session with our motto of doubling the energy efficiency improvement globally through 2030, and we are going to finish, in fact, with Mr. Minister's final remarks. Mr. Minister.
Thank you very much, Fatih, for accepting my request for Kenya to host next year's energy efficiency conference in Nairobi, and I want to take this opportunity to invite all of us to Nairobi. I hope I will see all the faces I see here. Come to our continent. Come, let's talk about climate change. Let's talk about energy efficiency as an adaptation mechanism towards achieving the energy requirements for this planet. Thank you.
So, Fatih, panelists, ministers, thank you very much. Thank you all. We're going to take a coffee break now. The main session will resume here at 11:10. Some of you are invited for the Schneider Electric public-private roundtables. They will be in the basement floor in the Lulu room. If you're involved in one of those, please head there. We see you all back at 11:10. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed the coffee break. Now we're meeting to discuss one topic which has become more and more a reality: hot summers and cold winters. Hotter than usual, colder than usual. Now, energy efficiency has never played such a crucial role as it is playing today, and it's not just about its role in decarbonizing, it's also about its role in ensuring energy security and in also ensuring that it benefits those who are most vulnerable in our society by really allowing to consume efficiently. And today's session now is focusing on buildings, because indeed buildings are an essential part of our transition towards low-carbon economy. And in fact, if I take the global figures, they represent 30% of the final energy consumption and 27% of all energy sector emissions. So it's crucial and it's decisive to tackle buildings. And within these emissions, heating and cooling represent about half of the energy demand, and also it's used essentially for water and space heating as well. Now, we know from various studies that the marginal costs of decarbonizing in heating and cooling will be lower than in other carbon-intensive sectors, such as industry and transport. So it's about really seizing this potential. And in doing so, we also need to tackle behavior, and behavioral changes are key. So it's in this context that I'm really pleased and honored to have with us an excellent panel coming and representing 4 continents of the world with different approaches, different perspectives, but sharing many common challenges. So we have with us today His Excellency Raimons Kūdars, Minister for Climate and Energy in Latvia. Welcome, Minister. We also have His Excellency Okasai Oplot, Uganda Minister of State for Energy. Welcome. With us and representing industry, Monsieur Benoît Bazin, CEO of Saint-Gobain company. Also with us today, Mr. Laurent Michel, who is the Director General for Energy and Climate at the Ministry of Ecological Transition in the country which is hosting us, France. Also with us, Ms. Paula Glover, President of the Alliance to Save Energy, and usually based in the United States. And we have with us Mr. Zhu Ji, CEO and President of the Energy Foundation, China. And our youngest representative in the panel today, Ms. Winifred Awingpoya Atanga. She's the ACT peer educator from Rwanda. So very big welcome to all of you. And I would start immediately with a question to Minister Kūdars. Minister, in 2021, Latvia recorded high temperatures of almost 34 degrees and a record low of minus 27 degrees. So a hot summer, a very cold winter. This temperature range, while exceptional, really highlights the topic that we are discussing in this session. Can you share with us the Latvian experience on this topic and how you've been dealing with it in Latvia?
Thank you very much for a question. And firstly, I thank you very much for invitation. And Latvia is not an official part of International Energy Agency, but we are in process. And I hope in next year, beginning of next year, we will be. And it's for us is very important. And thank you again for invitation here to be together with our colleagues. Of course, I come from a region with some big differences of temperatures. In summer it's hot and we wear in shirts, and in winter time we wear a warm coat, and it's absolute normal in Latvia. And the additional challenge is not only this difference of temperatures, additional challenge is fluctuation of temperatures. For example, now we have Latvia very warm day, approximately 22. For Baltic is a very good condition. But in night period, today we have approximately 5 and sometimes below 0. It is possible, and for heating system, and we in Latvia, of course, is key challenges is heating system. It is very, very difficult in terms of regulation, in terms of investment, in terms of efficiency, and it's two parts of efficiency. One part is producing of heating, and other is building. Of course, it's very important. But for producing of heating, it is some very, very big challenges to make the system efficiency and affordability for population, for citizens, because when we see last year's increasing of prices, it was very terrible time for many people in Europe and in Baltic region, Latvia too. And now we can see in future with most optimistical, but of course we must be ready for some emergency situation in sector of energy. And Latvia heating systems backbones is a robust district heating system. It was a legacy from Soviet time, but in generally district heating or centralizing systems of heatings is efficiency, and last 10 years, approximately 50 million euros was invested in the system across Latvia, and most of the system, district system, displayed in Riga, in capital of Latvia, and some other countrysides and other cities in Latvia. And just for example, because I have some experience as major, 13 years, so average Latvian cities, approximately with 20,000 people, we have fluctuation for producing of heating in winter time, approximately 30 megawatts, and in summer, not only for hot water, for buildings, 2 megawatts. It is some challenges in this situation. Of course, and digitalization, I think is a key word in this situation, because the system, every system of central heating system is built with many resources, and Latvian basic resource is biomass as a renewable resources. It is our basic load for district heating, but without gas for peak times, without other non-born technologies, as for example solar technologies, for central heating system, solar technologies, not only for producing of electricity, it is quite difficult.
Thank you very much, Minister Kudas. And indeed, you described the supply side, but then on the demand side, it's also where we need to work, and a lot on consumer behavior. And that's why I'd like to ask Mr. Tanga, indeed, as behavior and awareness campaigns are key in addressing people's attitude to energy consumption. You actually are the co-founder of EcoHomes, an initiative which is led by young people like you, and which is dedicated to providing space to promote sustainable changes, consumption, sustainability projects and campaigns. Actually, are the co-founder of EcoHomes, an initiative which is led
which is dedicated to providing space to promote sustainable changes through sustainability projects and campaigns, for instance, clean cooking solutions. What was the importance, you believe, of these campaigns in the success of your Eco-Homes initiative?
Thank you for the question, and thank you, IEA, for giving us a space to speak as young people. I believe many young people are here and would also love this opportunity, so we're very thankful to represent our young people. So for Eco-Homes is, for those of you who don't know, Eco-Homes is a local-led initiative by young people, for young people, but starting now in the future. Yeah, so we promote sustainable changes at home through recycling, plastic waste, and also organic waste for cooking. So this organic waste is biogas and ethanol gel. So for behavioral changes, Eco-Homes adopted a human-centered design in the process of building our solutions, because we believe that to be able to provide solutions for young people or for the community, we needed to understand the people that we are working for. So we stayed in with them, conducted research for the past 4 years. We are still in the process of research, even though our project has been launched, we continue to create more research. So in the process of human-centered design, we realized that it's really important to understand that campaigns on behavior is very important, because you can't create solutions for people without understanding what their problems are. And before understanding, you need to also, after understanding, you need to create awareness of what these problems are and how they can solve these problems with you. So I believe in the process of doing that, we're able to provide them with the idea of understanding that energy and energy consumption or conservation is very key. We could provide them with solutions, but how are we sure that they'll be able to use these solutions effectively? How they'll be able to use these solutions effectively is through energy efficiency and conservation. So we create awareness on energy conservation, how to use energy efficiently at home, whether in cooking or heating. We also we identified that in rural communities, because those are our target audience, we don't really target the cities because they have their own things, and the rural communities do not. There's always a gap, but you understand. So for local communities, most people do not understand that when you talk about cooking, it's energy. Well, we conducted like literacy campaigns in like a local school. So we asked them a question: what is energy? Oh, it's the ability to do work. Okay. Do you know that the fuel your mom uses to cook is energy? They're like, no, that's charcoal. What do you mean? So we had to create awareness. So behavior from a young age is very essential of them understanding that energy is not just the ability to do work, it is also what they use to cook, what they use to eat, or anything that they do, because I believe energy is the center of all the SDGs. No one should attack me, but that's what I believe, because without energy, everything works and revolves around energy. So I believe as our targets are young people, it is very, very important, and awareness and behavior campaigns play a very important role in understanding the basics of energy, from its efficiency to its conservation and its usage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and also for putting emphasis on the fact that it's not about imposing behaviors, but first and foremost, we need to understand who is the consumer at stake and address the specificities. Then let me go on, because in this transition, and if we are to really seize the huge potential of energy efficiency, we cannot do it without the governments, the young people, but also the industry, which plays a key role in providing the solutions and the services. And that's why I'd like to ask Mr. Bazin from Saint-Gobain. Saint-Gobain has actually set an objective to help its consumers reduce their CO2 emissions through the use of its products and solutions. or by reducing the carbon impact of their production. Now, how is this being actually achieved? And against the background of these increasingly hot summers and increasingly unpredictable winters?
Thank you. I'm optimistic because we have solutions indeed. The question is the scale and the speed. If you look at any building, you lose 30% of the energy through the roof, 20% with the facade, 15% through the floor. So tackling the envelope of the building is the solution to reduce by roughly 70% of the energy you spend. So this is what we provide in 75 countries around the world, all the solutions to have the right performance on the envelope of the building. By doing so, by the way, you can avoid 1.3 billion tons of CO2 during the lifetime of the building, because you reduce heat, you reduce cooling, etc., etc. So if I take Saint-Gobain solutions, we make 50 billion euros of sales around the world. The impact, the positive impact of our solutions during the lifetime of a good insulated home, a new home with the right standards, you save 1.3 billion tons of CO2. So that's massive, and it's 40 times the total scope 1 to 3 of emissions from Saint-Gobain to manufacture those materials. So that's tackling the envelope is the solution. The second is that it's very important to do things in the right order. If you were to put a heat pump in a badly insulated home, I take the image of driving your car with the windows wide open and the air conditioning at maximum speed. It's not good, it's not going to bring any benefit, and worse, we all know that we lack electricity, we lack green energy. There is not enough investment, even in EU, about green electricity. If we don't have the right insulation on the envelope, we will oversize all the equipment, and we will spend a huge amount of money of electricity and will not bring the benefits. So it's very important to do that. You know, I take also the sensor you can put in a building. When your kids are sick, you want the thermometer or do you want the drugs and the doctor? We provide the cure of the building by tackling the envelope versus the thermometer to measure what's left or not. Or if you have a badly insulated home, yes, it will be connected, but it will be badly insulated. And people will freeze in their school or freeze in their home. So I think we have to put things in the right order. The good news is that all those products are made locally, because the products in building materials don't travel, and we don't build in Canada, like in Vietnam, like in South Africa. So it's very important to be local for those local countries. But again, I'm optimistic because the solutions do exist. It's tackling the envelope, it's putting things in the right order, and it brings a lot of comfort and basic well-being for the users. It could be at home, it could be in a school, it could be in a hospital. It's very important to realize that a lot of people, even in France, we have 4 million of people who live in bad housing. And bad housing because they cannot either pay their energy bill or buy food. That's in France in 2022. So it's very important to take care of that. This is the real life of the people. You could find it a bit boring to renovate so many houses and million homes in France, in Europe, around the world, but we have to do it, and we have to do it in the right order, tackling the low efficient energy homes first with all the public subsidies, or I think we have to address that. If I take just France, we have 5 million of homes which are F and G, so the lowest grade on energy performance. They make 70 to 80% of the CO2 emissions. All the public efforts, all the norms should be there to progressively move up the minimum energy performance, tackling the envelope. But the solution exists, so I'm optimistic. It's a matter of scale and speed.
Thank you very much. And the idea really that we cannot, it's not about individual actions, it's not about replacing the window or putting the solar PV, it's the combination of all the measures that will really provide for most efficiency. And in this regard, I can't hold, even in my role as moderator, to refer to the Performance of Buildings Directive at European level, which is being negotiated as we speak. It just started yesterday with the European Parliament and the member states, and where among the provisions it's about tackling the worst performing buildings first, because they really can bring a lot of efficiencies in a short time. Now, we have heard from Latvia. Now we'd like to hear from France, and we've all come from a very, very challenging year, including the winter, where the whole of the world was looking into Europe and whether we would make it in terms of overcoming the winter. And countries like France have taken ambitious measures, notably to address the energy crisis, to reduce in an efficient way energy consumption. Mr. Michel, how did France go about this, and what was the balance in terms of maybe sometimes sacrificing some comfort of the consumers in order to make sure that we would also reduce consumption?
Yes, thank you very much for this meeting, this question. So the idea was asked by the President and implemented by our Minister to have minus 10% of consumption of electricity and gas in 2024. The plan, it was called Sufficiency Plan, was launched in October after, and I think this was very important, a strong consultation with many stakeholders, municipalities, but also, for instance, the world of sports, that use many buildings, businesses, and so on. What did we do? First, it was, let's say, small investments or small measures that could have a strong impact very fast. For instance, improved maintenance of heating devices or better use of your piloting devices in the buildings and so on. And of course, there was much emphasis on respecting rules regarding temperature in buildings not more than 19 degrees Celsius. And so this was, say, short-term actions. But already at this stage, we also put emphasis on a little more long-term actions, such as now there are regulations that compel you to install pilot devices until 2027, yes, in buildings. But we said, okay, this is for 27, but start now, we will give you subsidies to accelerate. And this gave the results, the Minister said. And also what was very important was, let's say, communication, public awareness campaigns, but also mobilization of many stakeholders. For instance, the heating and cooling and energy service companies made much promotion of these measures towards their customers, because the service companies work for customers. If the customer asks for something or does not ask for something, it's different. So they promoted all these measures, for instance, of better maintenance. And perhaps I will finish that by saying that also from the beginning of the plan and for the next step, we would this to be also a first step towards longer-term action. First, there will be a second sufficiency plan, will probably be announced next week for summer and preparation of next winter in order to keep these savings. It's not the crisis, perhaps is over or not, we don't know, but we want to keep the savings and we want to go further. That's why already some other measures have been launched, such as increased support to connection to district heating, also a big program towards municipalities and buildings and renovation of their buildings with two phases, or two tools, let's say. One tool to help them building their project, because it's not easy to make a project if you are a normal municipality. You don't have all technical means, you need advice. So there's support for this, and there are more public funds to help this renovation. It's only one example, but we made that also in industry, or of course for households with any increased support to individual people or to collective building. And also here an emphasis next year would be put in place on more advice, deeper advice to help people build their programs. So the strong results, much consultation with stakeholders, and awareness campaigns, and going to the future to build on this effort as a first step and not at the end of the story. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So also the role of information campaigns as a key element, and looking interestingly at what are these measures which have come out of a crisis, but which could actually become structural. And I think across the society, we've all discovered efficiency measures triggered by the need really to reduce and consume more efficiently. Let me now turn to Africa, and let me turn to Minister Upload and look into Uganda, which you would think has generally a warm climate with average daytime temperatures ranging from 21 to 25 degrees. However, and we tend to forget that it can be much cooler at night. So this daily temperature range can, of course, constitute a challenge in ensuring that people are comfortable in their home while trying to remain efficient. What has been and is Uganda's approach to this issue, Minister?
That's an interesting question. Thank you, Commissioner. You rightly said, when this one was said, the question, hot summer, cold winter, and I was just wondering, what am I going to say about this? Because we are within a comfortable zone of temperatures. The temperature is between, during the day temperature 21 to 25, night 15 to 19. So that's fairly comfortable. You can cover yourself. When it is cold, you put a blanket on. When you're outside, you'd rather sit under a tree into air conditioning. For me, the focus is using energy for economic transformation of the country. That temperature range for Uganda is very suitable for pests in agriculture, is suitable for diseases. So it is actually fighting other adversaries which come to enjoy the temperatures. So for us, it is mainly looking at what you do to the vulnerable people. A woman is actually predominantly using biomass for cooking. The children spend a lot of time fetching firewood. So it is generating adequate electricity, adequate appropriate energy to save those vulnerable, to move them to a comfortable zone. So we're looking at a diverse array of energy resources that we have. Uganda is predominantly a clean energy country. Over 80% of our generated electricity is through renewable energy because of the array of resources that we have. Hydro, geothermal, solar, because of being astride equator, the sun is always up there and we can generate that energy. We also look into wind, which we have in the country. So it is mainly using that energy efficiently to cause economic transformation. For me, I would be looking at how do I fight against the various adversaries in agriculture, because our energy is mainly focused for productive uses of energy. So we drive it to agriculture. How do I conserve agricultural produce? How do I get the woman to cook the food using clean energy? How do I move my products from one part of the country or globally to the markets? That's what we will be talking into. Energy for transformation, for better lives at household, but most importantly, use energy now for advancing health, advancing education, advancing industrialization of the country, and enhancing trade. That's what I would actually be discussing here, using energy for economic and productive uses. This is what I would present. I would set my own question out of this. How can I use energy for economic transformation and improving the livelihoods of the people?
Thank you, Minister Opolot, and I think we can take this away. I like the slogan, energy and energy efficiency to trigger economic transformation, to trigger positive economic transformation. Now, I'd like to turn to Ms. Glover, who's heading Alliance to Save Energy, and which mandate is quite an ambitious and challenging one. So the mandate and the mission of Alliance to Save Energy is make energy efficiency the most impactful, cost-effective driver of the just energy transition, reducing domestic emissions by 40%, while at the same time advancing equity, reliability, and affordability for customers. Now, this is a difficult one. How are you actually pursuing this vision in practice?
Yeah, so thank you for the question and for the invitation. And as I hear that goal out loud, yeah, can't believe we wrote that down and decided that's what we were doing. You know, we at the Alliance have really made a commitment to center equity because we understand that efficiency has multiple touch points, and there are a lot of ways that it's impactful for communities. The first, you know, not the first, but one that we often talk about is climate. But as many of us may know, that in the United States, climate is not always the driver for decision making. It's a very political kind of conversation. And so to pick up on the minister's theme, economics, right? Efficiency can drive economic empowerment in a way that no other sector of the energy business can. We have more than 2.5 million jobs in the United States can be created just from efficiency. That makes us the largest employer in the energy sector. Our roles are in 99.8% of the counties in the United States, so maybe 6 or 5 counties in the US do not have a job in energy efficiency. And so we center equity, but what we're talking about is how do we ensure that efficiency is available, affordable, and accessible to every single person, household, small business in our country. And that is a huge goal. And the other, alongside that, we have an administration that is really also focused on equity and has created a lot of initiatives, one of which is Justice 40, to ensure that we are all focused on those of us who we've left behind. The challenge with that is that most of these communities have not just been left behind with energy. They've also been left behind with access to technology. They've also been left behind with substandard housing. They've also been left behind with poor educational attainment. There are lots of income. There are all these other drivers. And so our job is to work with policymakers so that they understand that this problem is multifaceted, and that means we have to bring a lot more people to the table. It's not just industry and government. It also has to be advocates. It also has to be community leaders. It also has to be your local state officials. It has to be young people, because we have all of these different things that we're trying to really solve at one time, because they're so connected. And I'll just leave you with an example. Efficiency beyond the building does not move forward without access to broadband, right? All the sensors requires internet. But if you live in a community or have a household that does not have access to internet, then we can't get there. And so we do need to be able to bring those who advocate for broadband to the table when we're talking about efficiency policy, because we need them too, just like we need those who are working on water and other issues. And so for us at the Alliance, it's about convening everybody, understanding where people are, listening really deeply, looking at the policies that we're advocating for, and then honestly asking ourselves, what else do we need, because we know it's not enough.
Thank you very much. So energy and energy efficiency is a multifaceted challenge, and really requires a very inclusive approach. And this panel reflects some of that, but we could add many more representatives of society who would also need to come along to tackle this challenge. And let me now turn to Mr. Zhu Ji and ask you, in the case of China, what are the policies and actions that you have witnessed driving a faster deployment of highly efficient buildings in order to really accelerate the transition and, of course, ultimately also the comfort of people.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and also thank you for the invitation. So regarding the policy, no need to say policy can serve as a very, very important enabling environment to deploy technology, the management measurements. And with my observation, we have at least 4 major drivers, to implement the policy for the more efficient, higher energy efficiency building. Number 1, I would like to highlight green building standards. In China, we have had green building standards covered different dimensions, including energy use per unit square meters, insulation, as well as major appliance within the, for example, air conditioner, heating devices, etc., etc. So this is number 1. The second thing is electrification. The rate of electrification, especially in Chinese context, this is mainly related to heating and cooking. In China, we have our food culture. Many people, you enjoy Chinese food, but do not forget, if you want to enjoy very, very real taste of Chinese cook, and normally we need heating, with coal, with natural gas, etc., etc. But this is changing for younger generation. They also cook Chinese food, but they try to use electrified cooking. So, but certainly even more important thing is heating by which energy. So in the past, we mainly use coal. And afterwards, especially in the past 1 or 2 decades, we experienced a process for coal switching to natural gas, especially in urban area. And now we are stepping into a new stage. See how we can transit from both coal, natural gas towards electricity. And together with the process of our power, low carbon, deep decarbonization process in power sectors. So in early this morning, our Vice Chairman from NDRC, he also mentioned, very rapid development of renewable. So then that means we should combine all the things together as a whole system. On one hand, you decarbonize your power system, and then you electrify your end user of energy, including building. So this is why I emphasize building electrification. The third thing is about retrofitting, and I also saw from Schneider Chairman in his presentation. I also saw a very similar point. So in China, as you know, as a matter of the stock of the building and the equipment and the devices for residential use, for industrial use, we have a lot of old buildings, for example. And for those old buildings, normally they were built, maybe 30 or 40 years ago. At that time, we didn't have advanced technology, and the efficiency had been very low. And then how to improve that by retrofitting. And this is a very huge market. So just to show a figure. So during 2016 to 2020, the area for retrofitting is about 700 million square meters. And in the current 5-year plan period, I mean from 2021 to 2025, it's about 350 million square meters. And if you consider the unit cost, so that means a huge investment for improvement of insulation and for the improvement of appliance, heating system, cooling system, etc., etc. So these can make significant improvement of energy efficiency for building. Finally, I would also like to emphasize another policy instrument, that's efficiency improvement. I mean, against the baseline in 2080s. That means, so we have a different stage for the requirements of efficiency, energy efficiency, building energy efficiency. I mean, for example, 10 years ago, we required, newly developed real estate, newly constructed building. They have to improve, to reach energy efficiency by 65% reduction of energy use against the 1980s baseline. And now we are, almost reading the request, for 83% energy reduction against the same baseline, but with larger reduction of energy use. So those are the major lever for China to improve its building energy efficiency. And finally, I would also like to highlight the importance, about the cooperation and the interaction between government and enterprises, industry. So that's very important. No need to say, 5-year plan, to come up with the target for 5-year plan, and together with systematic guideline for building energy efficiency improvement from the government, together with the think tank, the research centers, and followed by action from industry. They need to have incentive, they need to have the enforcement based on data sharing, stakeholder consultation, etc., etc. In that way, government and enterprises, they work together to, especially targeting at the real estate developer. This is the most important stakeholders, to make the policy become the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, and what an impressive journey, and from the cooking with coal to the natural gas, and now looking into the electrification of a huge country and the challenges and what would be the impact and the role of the buildings. And you mentioned the need for cooperation and partnerships, and we'll give it a try for a second round where we'll need to be shorter, but let's give it a try as we started later. And picking precisely on your last point, Mr. G, I'd like to ask Mr. Bazin precisely, how should governments, industry leaders and stakeholders collaborate to improve building and equipment efficiency?
I think it's indeed a collaborative effort, because again, the good thing that the technical solutions in buildings do exist. Making a passive house, in Madrid, in Manchester, or in Philadelphia, we know how to do it. The trick is to help all the stakeholders, the homeowners, the financing, the private banks that do not participate a lot, on the energy transition. They should, they could be asked. The architects, the industrials, the mayors, the city mayors, etc. So I think that's the challenge. The best way to do it is to define norms. I think what the EU Parliament did with minimum energy efficiency, with visibility over time, because we have to keep in mind buildings, it's a low speed, inertia on building permits, on norms, on training the craftsmen. It takes 4 to 5 years to translate a norm into action. So I think we have to be patient. We have to give visibility, stability, a 10 years horizon. This is what the Prime Minister gave, about France, to divide by half the emissions in the next 8 years. So visibility, stability, cooperation through norms, and putting things again in the right order. We advocate, for instance, for a passport of energy efficiency in buildings. To do it, like you have shots when you have kids, in the right order, you start with, again, the envelope, you change your heating system, you change the air quality with ventilation, etc., etc. And public buildings have to be exemplary, they have to lead. So I think it's very interesting to say that the best energy is the one you don't spend, so that you can spend it for economic development, you can spend it for energy bill, for food, for education, so let's keep in mind the best energy is the one you don't spend, and we can and we will, we work together across many, many stakeholders.
Very good, thank you very much. And Ms. Atanga, how do youth organizations come into this partnership with industry, with policymakers, with local authorities?
Yeah, so building on the points made by Mr. Benoit, collaboration plays a really important role in energy efficiency, and young people play a much bigger role. So how do we do this? I think by involving young people and collaborating with them on their projects is a very important aspect. We require mentorships. We are young. We really don't know what world we are stepping into. So having an upper hand from someone who is more experienced would play like a very important role in helping us with our projects. There are many young people who are carrying out projects in energy efficiency, but they do not know how to go about with it. But when we have people in the high level that are able to help us in understanding how we can create our projects to be sustainable in long-term sustainable. And also another point is providing support for young people and giving them a platform. Just like this. I don't know how to say, but this explains a lot to my point about supporting young people and giving them a platform. And also, there's nothing without financial aid. Yeah. So involving young people could be looking for a young person in your community that has a project on energy efficiency or anything related to energy or sustainability. Give them a chance, give them seed funding, and then see what happens in the next 5 years. Trust me, it's going to be big. So just do it if you have the chance to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I turn to Minister Upload. How can you work and involve and make sure that also young people organizations are part of it and along with industry?
Thank you for that question. Young people should have a specific target. How do we put them into internship, apprenticeship, whatever we're doing? In the case of Uganda, when you consider housing, it is more about ventilation, allowing external temperatures to influence internal temperatures. When it is warm in the day, can we engage the young entrepreneurs, the students, to develop the designs of appropriate housing for that area, that part of the world? Secondly, can we involve the young generation in designing appropriate energy resources of the country? They should be at the forward, looking at the future. We should not be looking at what it is today. We should be encouraging them to look at what it will be tomorrow, learning from the history, the current, to improve the situation. We should be looking at them in designing appropriate appliances, especially for households. For example, Atanga is a lady. She should be thinking, how can she move the woman from where she is today to a better situation tomorrow? Looking at the transport, they are the ones who should be thinking about what should the transport mode be, how can they conserve energy in the transport of tomorrow, other than relying on what is today. Back home, I actually encourage the young generation to be thinking of effective and efficient use of electricity for transportation, effective and efficient electricity for cooking, effective use of the appliances, and also reducing the losses of electricity. Back in my house, when I look at it, it is the young ones who continue flicking the electricity on and off. And it's actually getting them into the culture of conserving energy. The young generation will help us to deliver. So this is what I would be looking for, making them part and parcel of planning, the policy setting, listening to them. What is it? What is it that they use? How can we help them to improve the situation for the future?
Thank you very much. And Mr. Michel, how is France going about this collaborative approach with actors across the society?
Yes, it's of course very crucial. Perhaps the first stage is defining together the targets, the best possible ways to address it, and so build the framework. So, for instance, we've made roadmaps for decarbonization of transportation, of building sector, and so on. And of course, every action program or regulation are discussed with stakeholders, municipalities, companies, and so on. So afterwards, I think we need much dedication and constance in implementation. It's very easy to say, for instance, we need skills. We need more people, more skilled people to address this renovation, building programs, and so on. But once you've said that, you've said nothing. You need to bring together the schools, the Ministry of Schools, universities, but also companies to help in delivering these courses and hire people or pre-hire them. So really we need a strong involvement. And also once we have put a target, for instance, we have a target for tertiary building, which is in 2030 minus 40%, in 2040 minus 50%, and so on. And this, it's a regulation, I think it's a social contract. We've all decided together, we are a democracy in which there are many consultations, but once you've decided something, there's a regulation, there are public support there. I think we must bring all efforts there to respect, because of course you have exemplarity of public buildings, but you have everybody, because I think when people think you have some of them who want to escape the social contract, it's not good for the action. And last thing also, I think it's also in implementation, bringing also people of different horizons together. We have a STEM, which is the white certificate schemes, in which energy suppliers are compelled to pay in order to support energy savings action. This is not sometimes nice for them, they have to pay, but it has created dynamics bringing them, the ones who use, produce energy and sell, the one who use, the one who bring solutions, the municipalities, companies. So and this has brought new ideas and new solutions. I think really we have to encourage that from innovation towards implementation. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Glover, this is part of the mission of the Alliance to Save Energy, precisely by convening and engaging in diverse public-private partnerships. So what's your take on this collaborative approach?
Yeah, I think, really briefly, two things. One, it's always important, we so many times take a macro view to these issues that we forget that there is a person at the end of what we're doing. And not, can be someone in a home, someone who's working in a business, but there's always somebody who's impacted by our work. And so when we think about collaboration and convening, we always start with deeply listening, and especially deeply listening to those we think we may disagree with. Because oftentimes those that we disagree with, we really don't disagree. It's just a tool that, right? We're really disagreeing about a mechanism or a tool, but not necessarily the issue. And that's a lot easier to get to when we acknowledge that there are lots of tools that we can use to solve this problem. There are lots of financing tools that we can use to help people, whether that's using community development banks or grants or loans or having it federally funded or state or locally funded or doing it through regulation and having it come through your utility bills. There are lots of different kinds of tools. And so when we are sitting there listening to people and acknowledging what their pain points are, then we're able to kind of get to a solution that we can all agree upon. And so if I'm trying to convince home builders to build their homes so that they are more efficient, I can do that in a couple of ways, right? But it's good for me to understand why they're not doing that now, right? How do they make their money? And is there a way for me to get them to see how what I'm asking you to do is also going to allow you to make money and not impact your profit margin? Because that's a real thing. And if we start from a place of saying, well, I don't care about that, then you can't get them to the table. And so it's really important to deeply listen to people, to constantly acknowledge that you don't know what you don't know. And there are a lot of things that we actually don't know. We assume we know what the right answer is. We assume that this thing is going to work. We assume that these kinds of policies are the right kind of policies. But really, if we're honest with ourselves, we're hoping. And so it requires that we are constantly paying attention to those policies that are enacted and then ensuring that the results are what we thought they were going to be. And not doing it far behind, but doing it close enough to that time frame that if you need to pivot, if you need to stretch, if you need to change something or shift something, you actually have time to do it. Because under the backdrop of all of this work that we're doing is a real sense of urgency. And what my experience tells me is that a sense of urgency sometimes makes us lazy about doing the things that are really tough to do. And collaborative work is difficult work. It is. It's tough work and it takes a long time. But if you do not do it, we will never get there.
Absolutely, and thank you for these encouraging words. And now moving to our two last interventions, go back to the policy measures and ask Minister Kuders specifically on the role of district heating in providing hot water and space heating in Latvia. And what have you seen as key barriers and challenges that slow down the progress on energy, on efficiency in buildings, heating and cooling? And what's been Latvia's approach precisely to district heating?
Thank you. Of course, the green transition efficiency is some not only challenges, but it's some opportunities for societies, for municipalities, for local communities. It is very important, some common conviction about next step towards efficient and green transition. It is very important. Of course, when we see Latvia example, some approximately 90% of our flats buildings was built before 1992, and now we have approximately only 10% is totally reconstructed and now energy efficient, and the saving of energy in this situation is approximately 40 till 50%. It's a huge amount. And of course, it's very important this conviction of society to make some right step in right moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Kuders. And because when we speak of heating and cooling, so often the heat pumps come up to the discussion. But we heard that we cannot just aim at single individual measures. We need to see it as a whole. But I'd like to ask Professor G, what do you think, how and to what extent can heat pumps actually deliver on both heating and cooling, but while having to be part of an overall design, and how you're going about it?
Sure. Thank you for the question. And talking about the heat pump, I would like to talk some stories in China about that. In fact, we might have different drivers to reach the same targets in China context. So we have at least 3 major drivers to promote the application of heat pump. Number 1, air quality. As you may know, 10 or even 20 years ago, we suffered from very poor air quality, especially from fine particulates. We call it the PM10 or PM2.5. And especially one of the major contributors comes from scattered coal used for heating, for cooking, especially for lower income group. Normally, they are located in rural area with low income. They are farmers. And also they are vulnerable. And how to improve that? I mean, on one hand, to reduce the air pollutant, but on the other hand, we should improve their comfort. I mean, so I regularly to visit to some villages in northern China, and I saw in winter the indoor temperature is exactly low. I mean, only say 10 to 11 centigrade, very, very cold. And then how to improve that? I mean, to reach 2 targets together. And the heat pump is one of the solutions. And in the past decade, China implemented air quality policy. One of the measures is to phase out scattered coal and replaced by solar energy, by heat pump. But certainly another choice is by natural gas. And for the moment, I should say we are only in the early stage. I mean, for larger penetration of heat pump in China. Why? Because we also tried coal switching to natural gas. But recently, especially after Ukraine war, we also saw the concern about energy security. I think we share the feeling from our European colleagues. So we also have very big problem for natural gas import. By the way, I mean, over 40% of natural gas come from international market. So this is a long-term energy security issue. And then these even make us be aware, oh, maybe we should switch to heat pump rather than natural gas for heating. I mean, when the rural people, these can be as large as I would say 5 to 600 million people. So very huge people, a huge amount of people, and then again together with the decarbonization of power system. And this is why we say, oh, we should work together for acceleration of renewable in China. This is something happening. And in the meanwhile, we use we call it the green electricity, green power, to power heat pump for heating, for cooling, for such a large group of vulnerable and low income population. And we believe this will help them to improve their productivity, to improve their comfort, and finally to improve their living quality. So this is the way for us to understand the heat pump. Thank you.
Thank you very much, because it's not a topic easy to address in 2 minutes. And just to conclude, and there were several takeaways, but clearly energy efficiency as a trigger for economic transformation, and in seizing the potential of energy efficiency in buildings, we need to pursue a holistic approach to look at the whole envelope, not just the individual elements of the building, but we also need to put all actors around the table, which goes actually beyond energy, digitalization, for instance, and other sectors. And we need to also work and be attentive to the behavior of the consumer, to actually be able to target the final consumer, and the role of campaigns, public awareness cannot be overemphasized. Thank you very much for your attention.